My name is Emily Brooks. Today is my son Jason's wedding day. I wore a deep green satin gown I'd sewn myself, with an old silver brooch pinned to the front, salvaged from my grandmother's vintage dress. It wasn't worth much, but stitching it onto my dress felt like threading my love and blessings into the fabric of this day. In the mirror I saw a woman in her early 50s. Fine lines now traced the corners of my eyes, and streaks of silver wove through my hair. But I stood tall, my gaze as clear as freshly polished glass. For over 2 decades I raised Jason on my own. From losing my factory job when it shut down, to dragging my tired body to set up a stall at the night market, and finally opening Emily's stitch room here in town. It was these 2 hands that held this family together. Jason made me proud, earned a scholarship, landed a great job in Boston after college, and now he's marrying a kind, thoughtful girl named Lily Warren. I helped with the down payment for their new home. Watching the 2 of them now, hand in hand like no one else in the world existed, my heart felt like it had been dipped in honey. Outside the ballroom at Fairmont Garden Hotel, I greeted wave after wave of friends and relatives, all coming to celebrate. Emily, you look absolutely radiant today. Jason's growing into the spitting image of his father. What a handsome man. Lily is the sweetest bride I've ever seen. They're perfect together. The well wishes came crashing over me like waves, and I met each one with a smile. Months of exhaustion from planning this wedding melted away in that joyful tide. Jason stood tall in a black suit, a soft gray boutonniere on his lapel. Lily, in her white dress, wore a delicate smile, shy yet graceful. They stood beside me, thanking guests one by one. The sight of them was like one of the wedding gowns I'd sewn, a labor of love, every inch perfectly comforting. My sister Susan had flown in to help. As she directed guests to their seats, she leaned close to whisper teasingly in my ear, "Emily, don't you dare cry today. Mess up that makeup and you'll regret it. You're the mother of the groom, remember?" I shot her a playful glare. "You never know when to stop talking." I said it with a smile, but my eyes were already beginning to sting. Because I knew too well how hard-won this happiness had been. Jason walked over with Lily, his voice solemn. "Mom, thank you, truly, for everything." Lily added gently, "Emily, I'll make sure we're happy together." I waved my hand, a little flustered. "All I want is for you 2 to be good to each other. That's enough for me." But deep down I thought, no matter how old your child gets, you never stop worrying. Today it feels like that 20-year weight on my chest finally got a little lighter. One day when I become a grandma, I'll pack up the stitch room and close it for good. I'll spend my days spoiling grandkids. For once I'll live for joy, mine and Jason's. The ceremony was about to start. The MC stood at the mic, cracking a few warm-up jokes. Guests were mostly seated. At the head table, Lily's mother, Mrs. Warren, sat beside me. We chatted quietly. She gushed about how lucky her daughter was, and I smiled in agreement, my heart full of pride. That's when, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a figure wobbling through the ballroom entrance. His hair was greasy and slicked back. The suit on him looked borrowed, shoulders drooping, pant legs creased, and his tie hung crooked like he'd just rolled out of bed. He scanned the room, eyes darting nervously, like he was searching for someone. A chill surged through my spine. Something about his presence felt all too familiar, and utterly wrong. I narrowed my eyes to get a better look. Deeper wrinkles, oily skin, a sleazy smirk that reeked of cheap lies. He looked like someone who haunted street corners whispering cons. But I recognized him in an instant. It was him. Gregory. The man who disappeared for 20 years. The one who walked out on me and Jason like we were nothing. I'd long assumed he'd dropped dead in some sleazy casino face down on a craps table. And now he shows up. At my son's wedding? Who the hell told him? How did he even know Jason was getting married today? My mind exploded with a thunderclap. It was like a bomb had gone off right next to my ear. All the blood in my body turned to ice. My heart thudded so hard it felt like it was going to punch through my ribcage. And then he saw me. His eyes froze for a split second, then that familiar, greasy grin spread across his face. The same one I used to dread. He flashed a row of nicotine-stained teeth, fake warmth dripping from every pore. "Emily," he said, his voice loud enough to slice through the music. "Jason's getting married and you didn't even tell me?" People started turning toward us. Guests at nearby tables lowered their forks and looked over, curious. If I hadn't done some serious digging, I wouldn't have known the groom's father wasn't even given a seat. He started walking toward the head table, shoulders swaying in that smug, entitled way, dragging that crumpled suit behind him like it still meant something. The rage in my chest ignited like a struck match. This was the man who drained every cent we had, right down to Jason's emergency hospital fund when he came down with a high fever. He vanished without warning, without a note. He left behind a sick child and a mountain of gambling debt. I still remember holding my feverish son, kneeling in that waiting room, begging the doctor to treat him first. We'd figure out payment later. I sewed clothes by day, hawked them at the market by night, and survived on 3 hours of sleep. I got us through it. Not him. And now, with one snide question, why didn't you tell me? He thinks he can wipe out 2 decades of betrayal. The fury inside me surged upward, boiling over. We had left a symbolic empty seat at the head table, one marked for father of the groom. It was tradition. Nothing more. I never ever thought he'd dare show up. But there he was, marching toward it, eyes full of smug entitlement like he'd earned that spot. I couldn't take it. I rushed forward, cutting him off like a lioness guarding her cub. Gregory Brooks. I spat his name so sharply my voice shook. You've got some nerve showing your face here. He stopped short, his expression darkening for a second, but just as quickly he morphed back into that snake oil smile. He pointed to the empty seat like it was his birthright. That's my seat, isn't it? I'm Jason's father. I belong there today. His voice dripped with condescension like I was just some obstacle in his way. His whole posture screamed, I dare you to stop me. It took everything in me not to slap him across the face. You get the hell out, I shouted, my voice rising past all pretense of civility. This family has nothing to do with you. That seat isn't yours. It never was. His smirk flattened into a sneer. His eyes narrowed, mean and gleaming. Emily, don't make a scene, he growled. It's my son's wedding day. You want to humiliate yourself in front of everyone. I'm his father. I deserve that seat. I let out a bitter laugh, trembling with rage. You deserve? You think this is about deserving? Jason was 8, burning up with fever, half delirious. I carried him to the ER in my arms, begging strangers for help. Where were you? You were tossing chips in a casino, drunk off your ass, handing out poker tokens like candy. He went to school with a patched-up backpack and jeans that other kids mocked. Where were you? Lying in some stranger's bed, probably still reeking of booze and betrayal. And now that he's grown up, successful, starting a life of his own, you suddenly remember you're his father? You think you get to waltz in, all smiles and excuses, and sit at the head table like none of it happened? Not in this lifetime, Gregory Brooks. Not a chance. My whole body burned with fury. I wanted to drag him out of that ballroom by the collar and toss him back into whatever gutter he crawled out of 20 years ago. We weren't exactly yelling, but the guests weren't fools. The buzz of whispers started rising like a swarm of gnats. Is that Jason's dad? Didn't he, disappear back in the day? Looks like he's here to stir up some drama. Oh, this is about to get good. Ugh, seriously? Emily's arguing with her ex at the wedding? What a mess. Some of the voices carried gossip, others judgment, and a few even pity. But it didn't matter what kind. Each whisper landed like a dagger in my back. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck like I was being stripped bare in front of everyone. I'd spent 20 years building a life. A name. And now this shameless bastard was tearing it all down, just by showing his face. Jason and Lily had clearly sensed something was wrong. They rushed toward us. Jason's smile was long gone, replaced by a deep frown, his eyes filled with shock and rising fury. Lily tugged at his sleeve, her voice low but urgent. Jason, who is that? Her tone was a mix of confusion and concern. Behind them, Mr. and Mrs. Warren were fast approaching as well, their faces tight with visible disapproval. Clearly, this was not part of the wedding program they had expected. A few of Jason's closest friends stood nearby, and one of them was already rolling up his sleeves like he was ready to step in and drag Gregory out. But Jason gave them a single look and they froze. He didn't want to make a scene. I understood that. But some men, if you don't tear off their masks right there in front of everyone, they'll just keep performing. I looked at my silent son, then at Gregory's smug, self-satisfied grin, and something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath. My voice was trembling with rage, but I kept it steady as best I could. Gregory Brooks. I spat out his name like lead weights hitting concrete. You have the gall to stand here and call yourself a father? When Jason was 8 and burning up with fever, I ran from house to house, begging for help to get him treated. Where were you? You were at a poker table, drunk, smoking, laughing your ass off. When Jason went to school with a torn-up backpack and jeans stitched at the knees, the kids made fun of him. Where were you? Rolling around behind some bar with whatever woman was willing to take you home? He studied his heart out, got into college, cried with joy when that acceptance letter came. Did you even know who he was then? And now, just because you heard he's getting married, because he's somebody now, you come crawling back, tossing around the word son like you earned it? I turned to him fully, my voice rising above the murmur of the guests. I've got news for you, Gregory. There's no place for you in this family. And Jason, he doesn't have a father like you. Gasps and whispers echoed through the room, but I didn't care. Every word was a nail driven into the coffin of his pathetic comeback story. If he had an ounce of decency left, my words should have scorched him to the bone. Blood might tie people together, I said, my voice dropping to a cold, deliberate whisper, but it can't tether a heart that rotted long ago. Jason doesn't need a parasite showing up just to bask in the glow of his success. He doesn't need the stain of you on what should be the happiest day of his life. For a brief moment, something twitched across Gregory's pudgy face. Maybe a flash of embarrassment, even shame. But it didn't last. He slipped right back into his usual mask. The shameless smirk, the faux earnest eyes. The performance. Gregory drew in a dramatic breath and let out a sigh like he was about to deliver a Shakespearean monologue. He raised a hand and dabbed at the corner of his eye, as if tears were there. They weren't. Not a trace of moisture in those bloodshot eyes. Eventually he managed to squeeze out a few crocodile tears, rubbing them theatrically between his fingers like they were proof of his suffering. He looked ready to launch into a full-blown confessional. Emily, he croaked, voice thick with fake emotion, I know I did you and Jason wrong. I've spent the last 20 years living with that guilt. Every day I thought about him. I regretted everything. He sniffed loudly like some wounded soldier returning from war instead of a conman cornered by his past. I didn't want to leave. He suddenly raised his voice as if injustice had been done to him. I was set up. I owed a lot of money, to loan sharks. They said if I didn't pay they'd come after you and Jason. I had no choice. I had to run, to protect you. He dropped his gaze, shaking his head like the weight of the world was on his shoulders, like he was the one who'd been abandoned. These years, I've done it all. Worked construction sites, washed dishes in diners. Slept in my car, ate once a day sometimes. All I ever wanted was to make things right someday. To save up enough, come back home and face you like a man. Then he turned toward Jason, his face twisted into a caricature of heartbreak. You'd think he was about to fall to his knees and beg for absolution. Jason, Gregory choked out, his voice wobbling with exaggerated emotion, your dad knows he was wrong. I really, truly know I was wrong. Just let me be here today, just this once. Let me see you get married. That's all I want. It's the only wish I have left in this life. After today I'll do whatever you ask. You want me to scrub floors like a servant? Fine. I'll do it. His body trembled as he spoke, chest heaving like he was about to faint from the weight of his own remorse. A few guests who didn't know the backstory began murmuring, unsure. One even whispered, well, he does seem kind of pitiful. But me. I stood there listening to his Oscar-worthy performance with a rising wave of nausea curling in my gut. 20 years had passed and somehow his lying had only improved. Every tear, every sigh, every dramatic pause choreographed to perfection. Too bad he couldn't hide the truth written all over his face. That bloated body, that slick, greasy skin. This was not the look of a man who'd been sleeping in his car and eating scraps. If he hadn't laid it on so thick I might have almost bought it. He wasn't driven away by loan sharks or desperate to protect us. He gambled himself into a hole, burned through every penny we had, borrowed from every relative we knew, took out loans from people you never want to owe, then disappeared overnight. Jason was sick in bed and this man didn't even look back. And now he's repackaged himself as the tragic, broken-hearted father coming home? I stole a glance at Jason. My sweet, soft-hearted son. He's always been kind, always wanted to believe the best in people. And no matter how grown up he is now, some part of him probably still wants to believe that Dad could mean something. Especially today of all days. I clenched my fist so tight my nails bit into my palms. And then, like vultures circling a fresh kill, they started showing up. People I hadn't seen or heard from in decades, suddenly announcing themselves as Gregory's relatives. Not one of them had sent so much as a birthday card over the years, yet here they were, right on cue. A man stepped forward claiming to be Gregory's cousin. He cleared his throat like he was preparing for a sermon and spoke in a tone dripping with faux wisdom. "Emily," he said in that maddeningly reasonable voice. "Gregory knows he messed up. We all make mistakes. What matters is whether a person wants to make it right. He said a lot of heartfelt things just now. Doesn't he deserve a second chance? And Jason, he's Gregory's son. Blood ties like that can't be broken." He paused, gesturing around. "It's a wedding, for God's sake. A happy day. Let's not make a scene. Don't give the Warren family something to snicker about." Before his last word even faded, a few older women chimed in, clucking like hens at a family funeral. "Oh come on, Emily, what's so unforgivable here? Can't you two just talk it out later? Don't ruin the boy's big day. It's Jason's wedding. Don't turn it into a shouting match. It looks bad." Their voices blurred together, full of empty pleasantries and surface-level concern. But none of them were thinking of me. They weren't here to defend us. They were here to preserve appearances. To make sure no one had to feel awkward over their champagne toasts. They didn't understand that this wasn't some ancient spat we'd never gotten over. This wasn't about forgiveness withheld. This was about wounds that had never once been acknowledged, debts that had never been paid. The so-called cousin, now feeling pretty confident, turned to Jason, puffing up with faux authority. "Jason, you're a good kid. Talk to your mom, huh? Your dad's been through a lot too." Gregory latched onto those words like a drowning man to driftwood. He spun toward Jason with a pathetic smile plastered across his face, eyes wide with desperation, trying to look like a man reformed, like the victim who'd just been misunderstood. And I stood there listening to it all, feeling like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. "Blood is thicker than water," they said. Where was that blood when he walked out the door with our last few dollars, leaving me and Jason to face eviction, hunger, and hospital bills? Where was that sacred bond when he vanished without so much as a goodbye? And don't make this hard on the kid. Who do they think made Jason's life hard? Who abandoned him, lied to him, left him wondering what he'd done to be unworthy of a father? They think they're here to help. But all they're doing is handing Gregory a microphone and asking the rest of us to clap along. These so-called relatives, every last one of them preaching from their moral high ground. Not one had stood by me when I was drowning. Not one had helped carry the weight. Not one had spent a single sleepless winter holding it all together with bleeding hands and a breaking heart. And yet here they were, playing peacemakers, acting like they were the voice of reason in our family, like they had some God-given right to tell me what forgiveness should look like. I didn't see a shred of concern on any of their faces. Only discomfort, embarrassment, fear that the wedding might turn ugly, that they'd have to explain to their friends why the groom's mother didn't keep things civil. Inside I felt cold as stone. But my eyes, they only burned brighter. This time I wouldn't back down. If I gave in now, Gregory would take it as an invitation. Next time he'd bring more relatives, more claims to what he thought he was owed, his father's rights, his share of Jason's life, his piece of our peace. He'd want a seat at the table, a say in decisions, a hand in our future. I would rather die. The ballroom had gone still, as if the whole room had taken a breath and forgot to let it go. All eyes turned to Jason, dozens of invisible spotlights now fixed squarely on him. He stood frozen, shoulders locked. He looked at me, then at Gregory. His brow furrowed, lips drawn tight. I watched the muscles in his jaw twitch as he fought something deep, something hard. And he stayed silent. My heart climbed into my throat. Because I knew this boy. My boy. Jason had always been gentle, thoughtful, careful not to hurt others. Even as a child, he never threw tantrums, never demanded anything that wasn't offered freely. He tried so hard to be the kind of person who made everyone happy. But that's exactly what terrified me now. Because deep down, in some hidden place he probably never spoke of, I knew there was a part of him that still ached for a father. Even just the idea of one. He used to watch other kids sitting on their dad's shoulders at the park. He used to stare at the empty chair beside me during parent-teacher nights. He wanted to be claimed. Even once. I was afraid he might fold. Afraid he'd give in, not because he believed Gregory deserved a place, but because he didn't want to ruin the day. Because he didn't want to be cruel. And if he asked me even once to let Gregory stay, I don't know what I'd do. Flip the damn table maybe. Then in that awful pause Gregory made his move. He pulled his dirtiest card. Emotional blackmail. He reached out a hand trying to grab Jason's arm. His expression twisted into something even more pathetic, mouth pulled down, a smear of fake tears still clinging to the corners of his eyes. Jason, he whispered, pleading now. I know you're a good kid. You've got a kind heart. You wouldn't want your dad to be humiliated in front of all these people. Right? If you let me stay today, son, I swear, I'll make it all up to you. Everything you missed, I'll give it back. I nearly lunged. His voice was syrupy, broken. His eyes were damp. And I'd never hated someone more. He wasn't a man asking forgiveness. He was a snake, dressing up in the skin of a wounded dog. And no amount of theatrics could hide the rot underneath. I stared at Jason, barely breathing. My whole body had gone clammy. My palms were slick with cold sweat. My nails were digging into my skin. Jason, don't you dare. You can watch me suffer. You can watch me bite my tongue and swallow my pain. But I will not stand by and let this man ruin you. The weight of guilt. The poison of duty. That's what he wants to hook into your spine. He'll drain you dry until there's nothing left to give. What we should fear most isn't how vicious the enemy is. It's how easily we give them the key. When we hesitate, when we retreat, when we try to keep the peace at our own expense. The room was suffocatingly quiet. Even the soft instrumental music had been turned down, or maybe I just stopped hearing it. Gregory sniffled for effect. No one else dared speak. And then, just when I thought I might scream from the pressure, Jason finally spoke. His voice was soft, but it cut clean through the silence like a blade. Dad, he said. Gregory lit up like he'd won the jackpot. His mouth curled into a grin. Eyes sparkled with smug relief. He thought he'd won. My heart dropped. My palms went ice cold. Jason looked at Gregory and said calmly, You want to sit at the head table? Fine. Gregory's face lit up instantly. He nodded eagerly, voice cracking with excitement. Good boy, I knew you'd. Jason raised a hand and cut him off. But nothing in this world is free. The room fell into an eerie hush. Even the sound of a server pouring water in the distance seemed unnaturally loud. All eyes turned to Jason, including Gregory's, still half frozen in a forced smile, and mine, wide with disbelief. Jason slowly reached into the inner pocket of his suit and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Crisply folded. Clean edges. Like he'd been carrying it for this moment. He walked to the head table, placed it in the empty chair where Gregory had aimed to sit, unfolded it with care and began writing, deliberate, controlled strokes. After a few minutes he handed it to Gregory. It was a list. Line after line of neatly written numbers and expenses. A few curious guests craned their necks trying to get a peek. Jason's voice was calm. Measured. This is the cost my mother bore alone after you disappeared. Your share of raising me. He tapped the sheet. These are only the essentials. No emotional damages included. No cost for the nights she couldn't sleep, for the meals she skipped, for the tears she swallowed while trying to give me a decent life. From the year you vanished when I was 8, until I turned 18. 10 years. 10 years, he said, during which you were legally obligated to support me. Gregory opened his mouth but nothing came out. The smile on his face had already begun to collapse. Jason went on. The minimum cost of living in our town, plus basic school expenses, $10,000 a year conservatively. 10 years. That's $100,000. You owe that to my mom and to me. He turned the paper, revealing the final total. Add to that the emotional trauma you caused by disappearing and the toll on her daily life. I haven't included interest. I haven't asked for therapy fees. I'm rounding low, $50,000 flat. That brings the total to $150,000. Jason stood tall now, voice unwavering. I want you to pay that. Right here. Right now. Cash, wire transfer, or check, your choice. You want to sit at the head table? Want to claim the title of father? That's the price. You pay, I'll pour you a drink myself. You can walk me into the banquet hall. But if you can't pay? If you brought nothing to the table, then you don't get a seat at it. You don't even get to stand here. I was stunned. Completely floored. My son, the quiet one, the gentle one who always avoided conflict, had just delivered the most brutal, righteous reckoning I'd ever seen. No shouting. No rage. Just cold, clear arithmetic. Every word was a scalpel, precise, undeniable, and deeply, deeply cutting. I stared at him. Not the boy who used to avoid asking for new shoes. Not the boy who once cried because no one clapped for him at the school play. This was a man. A man who had learned exactly where to draw the line, and how to defend it. Gregory's face was a mess of colors. Flushed red, blotched purple, even a sickly green under his eyes. Then came the white. That pale, washed-out white of a man cornered and exposed. He raised a trembling hand and pointed it at Jason, lips twitching like he was chewing glass. Finally, from between clenched teeth, he hissed. You little bastard." The words landed like a slap. He slammed his hand on the table, missed the center and hit the edge, but the crack was loud enough to make a few guests flinch. Then he exploded. Like someone had lit the fuse on a keg of cheap fireworks. "I'm your father," he screamed, shrill and raw. "Your real father. And you're asking me for money, in front of all these people?" His spit flew as he raged, face flushing the color of raw meat. "Is this what your mother taught you? That blood means nothing. That money is everything. Where's your decency? Where's your damn humanity?" He roared like a caged animal, raising the banner of family, waving it like a weapon, hoping that guilt and shame would cover the truth. That he wasn't a father. He was a creditor who never made a single payment, now screaming about his entitlements when the bill finally came due. But Jason just looked at him and laughed. Not a loud laugh, not even amused. A cold, hollow sound that sliced through the air like the edge of a knife. A laugh that mocked the entire pathetic performance. "Dad," he said, his voice smooth and razor-sharp, "don't rush to accuse me. Let's take this one step at a time." His tone was calm, deliberate. But his eyes, they cut. "First, if you want to talk about being family, you'd better start with love. Did you ever love me? In these 20 years, did you even spend one day acting like a father? Second, everything I know about being a man, about integrity, accountability, gratitude, she taught me." He pointed at me. "She also taught me that if you borrow, you repay. If you break it, you fix it. You should be familiar with that, shouldn't you?" Gregory opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Jason didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That calmness, it was ice beneath which blades gleamed. "What you owe isn't just money," he said. "You owe her 20 years of her life. You owe every moment you walked out of mine. The missed birthdays, the empty bleachers at every game, the silence where a father's voice should have been. But I'm not charging you for that. I'm only asking for the money," he said. "And frankly, that's me giving you the discount of a lifetime, just because you happen to be the man who got my mother pregnant." The entire room went still. You could hear the air tighten. Jason paused a beat, then shifted gears. "Oh, and by the way," he added, gaze like a scalpel, "that $150,000? That's calculated in 20-year-old dollars. If we want to get precise, adjusted for inflation, interest rates, and emotional damages, $150K is just the opening bid. You stole every last cent from my mother and left her holding the sky up alone. If we tripled it, you'd still be getting a deal." He slipped his phone from his pocket and held it up. "So what's it gonna be? Bank transfer or check? I'm ready either way." Whatever blood had been left in Gregory's face drained out in an instant. He sat there, frozen like a computer caught in a crash loop. Then he snapped. He shot to his feet, the chair screeching behind him like it was in pain. "I'm your father," he screamed, frothing at the mouth. "And you're handing me a bill? In front of everyone? Is this what your mother taught you? To worship money? Is that all I am to you now? A damn dollar sign?" His voice grated like sandpaper, ragged and shrill. "I raised you. I gave you life. You think that's worth nothing? You think you made it here on your own? And now you want to humiliate me for this? This pocket change?" His words fell apart. He began flailing, shouting over himself, spit flying, eyes wide and bloodshot. "I regretted having you the year you were born," he bellowed, face twisted in rage, body shaking with the effort. "I just wanted a damn seat. You act like I asked for your house and car. You think you're too good for me now. You've got a fancy suit and a fancy job, so now your father's just garbage. He looked like exactly what he was. Not a father at a wedding, but a deranged man trying to crash a celebration he had no part in. No one said a word. No one helped him. Jason didn't flinch. Didn't blink. He just turned slowly to face the entire room. His voice was quiet. Measured. Dead calm. I'd like to make a formal statement, he said. From this day forward, Gregory Brooks is no longer part of my family. He pulled a second folded sheet of paper from his breast pocket. Held it up for everyone to see. This is a family disavowal notice. I will be filing it with my mother, Emily Brooks, next week for notarization. He looked out over the crowd, at friends, family, strangers. Socially, legally, emotionally, there is no longer a father role in my life. Not in name. Not in spirit. Not in memory. Gregory stood there like he'd been slapped in the face in front of a live audience. The words caught in his throat and stayed there. Jason kept speaking, his voice as steady as ever. This wedding, he said, was built by my mother. She walked every mile with me to get here. So if anyone thinks they can show up today and claim the title of Dad for a little attention, maybe start by asking yourself if you've earned it. No one said a word. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. And then it was my turn. I stood, fully, walked over to Gregory, took the list and the statement from Jason's hand, and gently placed them on the table in front of Gregory. Then I said just one sentence. You've been absent from Jason's life for 20 years. Please, stay that way. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut like a dull blade, slicing away what little dignity he had left. Lily's father rose quietly from his seat and spoke to the hotel manager. Seconds later, 2 security guards appeared beside Gregory. Sir, one said calm but firm. You're disrupting the event. We'll have to ask you to leave. Gregory glanced around, at me, at Jason, at the guards. His lips moved like he wanted to say something. But no words came out. No one pleaded for him. None of the relatives who'd backed him earlier said a thing. Even the ones who spoke up for him before quietly averted their eyes. When the guards escorted him toward the doors, I saw it land on him all at once. It wasn't just a chair he had lost. It was a role. A title. A place he could never claim again. The doors shut behind him. And for 2 seconds the room held its breath. Then the music resumed. Soft, graceful, rising like sunlight spilling back into a room. Jason came back to me. He didn't speak. He just reached out and took my hand. Lily's father raised his glass gently and said, Emily, you're an extraordinary mother. I nodded and returned to the head table. To the seat that had been left empty. The one meant for the real parent. Gregory, meanwhile, stood outside the hotel, gripping a wrinkled paper bag stained with cake. His face was burning red as he paced and shouted into his phone. They're insane. All of them. Insane. Can you believe it? That little bastard Jason actually gave me a bill. A damn bill. He's gonna pay for this. I swear to God I'll sue for emotional damages. A woman's lazy voice came through the speaker. Sweetheart, don't get your blood pressure up again. Blood pressure. I'm being robbed. Gregory barked, stomping out a cigarette as ash scattered around his shoes. They're trying to screw me over. Make me pay, make me look like a fool, throw me out like garbage. Not happening. Hell no. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was that just 1 week later he'd receive an official envelope from Jason's attorney. A thick stack of documents, clear and thorough. A civil lawsuit. Filed for failure to provide child support and for emotional damages. At the top was a printed copy of the very same invoice Jason had placed on the table that day. Itemized. Line by line. Gregory's face drained of color. His first reaction? Ignore it. That is, until he got the call. Mr. Brooks, said Jason's lawyer, calm and courteous, our investigator has already located your real estate holdings and bank accounts. We advise you to fulfill the payment within 15 days to avoid a motion for asset seizure. Gregory froze. All those years he thought he'd hidden his tracks. The house down south, the car, the cushy setup with a widow who'd inherited an insurance payout. All of it had become evidence. Within 2 months he was forced to sell one of the houses, offload the car and wire the full $150,000. The day the money arrived I didn't celebrate. Jason came home, handed me the deposit receipt in a sealed envelope and said, "Mom, you can spend it however you want." I held the envelope, silent for a moment. Then I said quietly, "I won't spend it on myself. I'm not owed a better life. I'm owed time." 1 year later, Stitch Room closed its doors. The old tailoring shop was repainted, soft curtains hung in the window. Inside, kids sat at tables learning how to sew by hand. I stood by the sewing machine helping a 16-year-old girl adjust her fabric. On the wall, a simple wooden sign hung quietly. "This is not a shop. This is what you do when no one shows up for you." I looked at that sign, my gaze calm. No anger. No grief. Just peace. Everything was exactly as it should be.